It's time for another reaction time. Someone sent me in an article titled The 10 Best Blockbusters of the Last 40 Years. 40 years takes you back to 1985, and this is their picks for the 10 best blockbusters in that window of time. Now, I'm very curious as to their definition of blockbuster because you can define that many different ways, and, well, I'm sure this will be very interesting. What do you think are some of the best blockbusters of the last 40 years? Almost my entire lifetime. I'm old enough that there are a few movies, my life expands slightly beyond 40 years. Also, if you're watching this on the replay, this is being recorded or streamed live to my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoy my channel, if you want more Sean Chandler Talks About, consider joining over on Patreon. I do live streams like this one. I do a weekly Q&A. I've got a box office show and a number of kind of exclusive videos each month. So if you enjoy my channel, if you want to support it, if you want more Sean Chandler Talks About, check out that link down below in the description. And let's get started with their picks. Not mine, their picks for the 10 best blockbusters of the last 40 years. Coming in at number 10 on their list, we have Top Gun Maverick. So we are kicking it off with a movie that, in terms of the last 40 years, is very recent. Top Gun Maverick, I'll say I'm cool with it. If I were to make my pick for the best film of the decade thus far, pretty sure I would go with Top Gun Maverick, in which case, if you're picking your favorite movie of each decade, makes sense, and it's a blockbuster, makes sense that it would make it onto a list like this. It's just kind of a perfect crowd pleaser. It is a perfect, old-fashioned, classic, tried and true blockbuster. It's led by a movie star. It's got plenty of spectacle. It's an underdog story. It just hits all of the right beats, and it does every single one of them with excellence. And like, you feel stuff, it makes you laugh. It does every single thing right. And it's an example of a sequel that improves upon the original film. So however you want to look at it, of course it's a blockbuster. I think it's great. So it being included on this list, I am 100% okay with. Will I agree with their next pick? Moving right along, we have Barbie. First thought, my immediate thought, beyond the fact that I wasn't as hot on Barbie when it first came out. I respect a lot of things about it, but I also think it's a pretty flawed film. I think it's overly preachy. It tackles too many ideas. And so the idea that it's the best of something, I would strongly disagree with that. When I first looked at this list, I thought it was the best blockbusters of the last 10 years. And I went, I disagree, but I get it, I suppose. Then I remembered it's not the 10 best blockbusters of the last 10 years. It's the best blockbusters of the last 40 years. And the idea that Barbie is one of the 10 best blockbusters of the last 40 years, I just can't get there. There's just another enormous problem here. We're 2 movies into this list. 100% of the list thus far, which is only 2, is from the last 3.5 years, which immediately I see that and I go, that's a lot of stuff that's really recent to be on a list that you went, let's go all the way 40 years back. And we've got 2 movies from the last 3.5 years. That feels like some recency bias. Maybe I don't know the writer of this article, feels like they might be on the younger side of things, something like that, to justify this much recency on a list like this. But I don't see it. I think it's the kind of movie that scratched the right itch at the right time. It did do a lot of interesting things. It did speak to a group of people, but 10 best of the last 40 years, I just don't see it with a movie that I think has quite a few rough issues in kind of how it's put together. We are now a third of the way through our list. This is why I thought the list was for the 10 best blockbusters of the last 10 years. The first 30% of this list is movies from the last 6 years. That's crazy. That they designed the list to be the last 40 years. 40 years! Almost my whole lifetime. 30% of the list thus far is the last 6 years. With all of that said, if you're making a movie on the best blockbusters of my lifetime, I think you have to have a representative pick from the MCU. Best blockbusters, MCU kind of defines blockbusters for almost the last 20 years. So an MCU pick in there makes a lot of sense. Where you go with that, you can go in many different directions. Endgame makes a lot of sense. I think it's one of the best MCU films. Of course, it's the highest grossing MCU film. It is the peak of the Infinity Saga, or the culmination of the Infinity Saga. And I think for that reason, it becomes kind of the unique thing. It's the one that can only exist because it is part of this gigantic franchise. And that in and of itself, they pulled it off. It was satisfying to almost everyone. Therefore, it is the one that is kind of unique in a way that very few movies even can categorically be compared to it. And for that reason, I think it probably is, just on that level, maybe the best representative sample. Maybe you could have picked Winter Soldier, you could have picked the first Avengers or something else. But an MCU film being on this list, I think, is a must. Picking Endgame, totally understand it. And I probably would go in the same direction, or I'd go with Infinity War. But absolutely, I'm on board with this one. What do we have next? Moving right along, this is the moment where I realized, wait, this list wasn't just the last 10 years. Jurassic Park didn't come out 10 years ago. What is this? Jurassic Park, 100% agree. Totally on board with this. Jurassic Park isn't one of the best blockbusters of the last 40 years. It's just one of the best blockbusters. Of course, if you're using the term blockbuster, even as I'm dissecting this, the term blockbuster was invented because of the movie Jaws, followed by Star Wars, where out of nowhere there started being these movies that just drew these crowds of people, that drew lines around corners and busted the blocks. If you're going to make a list of the best blockbusters of all time, the term, it only qualifies going back to the movie Jaws, so you might as well just go blockbusters of all time, go back 50 years to Jaws and onward, but they went with 40 years. Jurassic Park, of course, belongs on that list. It, of course, has spawned this franchise that is still cranking out massive hit films. Even when they're mediocre, they print money for Universal because they tapped into something. And the first one was the best idea, executed the best, with the best characters, the best ideas. And it was just the perfect kind of lightning in a bottle of technology being at the right place where you could do something groundbreaking, but with a director that in no way took it for granted that they were doing VFX, doing CGI. And so it just holds up over 30 years later. So easy, no question. This one, wholly agree that it belongs here. This list, we're halfway through the list. And we have another movie that this movie is now slightly over 10 years old, but it's 10 years and 3 months old. 50% of our list we have thus far, 80% of the list we've looked at thus far is from the last 10 years and 3 months. That's called recency bias. You have a list of 40 years of blockbusters. Why is this list so much of the last 10 years? If you just wanted to make one for the last 10 years, make that article. Don't call it last 40 years if you haven't seen enough movies that are older than 12 years old. So Mad Max Fury Road, I'm not as crazy about this movie as a lot of people are. but I also don't necessarily object to being on this list because it is just such an achievement. I think on every technical level, you can say it qualifies as a blockbuster because it's a budget of like over $150 million or right around $150 million. It grossed about $400 million. It was wide released, has movie stars. It's a franchise. So it obviously fits it, and it's an action movie. So it obviously fits into the category of blockbuster in those regards. But like at its core, at its heart, it's not like at all. Like Mad Max Fury Road, the Mad Max franchise is not actually at its heart what you think of when you think of a blockbuster, which is something that's actually like catered, designed for the masses, mass consumption blockbusters. Just, it's not remotely that. There's scenes in this movie of human women being milked. Like, it is so weird. It's like this strange anomaly where what should be this indie little action film had an enormous budget, was made in this insane way, and it was released, and despite a lot of 20 years of obstacles to it happening, with like this pure version of what George Miller wanted it to be. So like it's tough for me to think about it as a blockbuster because it is such a George Miller thing. At the same time, I mean, it does qualify. I wouldn't put it in my list, but I also I don't fault it. I'm not like, what's this doing here? This is a weird pick. I get it. Also, because so much of this list has this recency bias to it, where I start going, when I really think blockbusters, like MCU defines blockbusters of the era. Jurassic Park defines blockbusters for the 90s. And you go, Mad Max doesn't really do that. It's a great film, but is it like when you think blockbuster, I almost put it in this other category. But like I said, if you've seen me talk about the movie, like I've literally read the book about the making of it twice in the last 2 years. Like I love this film. I've loved the Mad Max movies since the mid 90s. But I categorizing like top 10 blockbusters, that just feels strange to me to say that. Next up on the list, The Dark Knight. Now, two thoughts here. Thought number one, of course, like last 20 years, comic book movies have defined blockbusters, and probably the most celebrated one is The Dark Knight. Christopher Nolan. If you want your representative sample for Christopher Nolan, totally get it. Totally want it on here. And then the other thing with comic book movies would be Marvel. So like having a Marvel sample, having a Dark Knight / Nolan sample, totally get it. Totally agree. But we are now we've made it to we've done 60% of our entries on this list, and only one of them is from over 20 years old. Recency bias once again. But The Dark Knight, of course, is a fantastic film that does what more blockbusters need to do. It goes out of its genre and pulls in outside influences. So it is a comic book movie, it is a Batman movie, it is a Joker movie, it is also Christopher Nolan's Heat. It is also making commentary on surveillance. It is a movie that has these thematic ideas about escalation, the good of the people, and it explores ideas. It is a great example of a smart blockbuster. So no objection to it being on this list. However, we've only had one movie on this list that has come out before The Dark Knight. That's crazy. No 80s yet. No early zeros yet, and only one from the 90s. Moving into the top four, another movie from this year, another movie from this decade, Sinners. So we're now 70% of the way through the list, and we have three movies which are from the last 3.5 years. We have 4 movies from the last 6 years. We have 7 movies. Excuse me, my math got off there a little bit. But I think I would object to Sinners being on this list, not on a quality level or anything like that. It cost under $100 million. like it is a mid-budget film that overperformed in the United States and didn't perform all that great overseas. I don't know that this qualifies as a blockbuster. It wasn't meant to be a blockbuster. Like, they didn't budget as a blockbuster. It's a movie about like literally one building. When you think blockbusters, spectacle size, like it's about one building, I don't think it even, what is the definition of blockbuster for this list? I don't really understand what it is. Also, how many movies before the year 2000 have you seen? I'm very confused by this list. Sinners is probably my number one movie of the year. So this is not a statement about Sinners not being good. If you want to do Ryan Coogler's version of From Dusk Till Dawn, that's also a celebration of music and also filled with all sorts of commentary on race in issues, things like that, is a great movie. Like, it's entertaining, it's thoughtful, it's creative, awesome movie. I just don't think I would call it a blockbuster. And to say the best of the last 40 years, we don't have a single movie from the 80s on this list. Not one. Not one movie from the 80s yet. We got 3 movies left. But we have a movie that came out less than 6 months ago. I think sometimes you need time to go, like, this thing has stood the test of time. It's not just the cool thing. It's not just the movie that was entertaining but also made me think and it was fresh, but it has stood the test of time. You can look at a number of movies from 1985 that have done that. And you can look at movies from 86 and 87, 89. So I just don't think it qualifies as a blockbuster, but also it just feels too soon to make that statement. Moving into our top 3, please have something from before the year 2000. We have another movie from 20 years ago. At least it's the second oldest movie on the list. King Kong from 2005. I need to know how old the author of this article is. I must understand how old the author, the person that made this list is, that such a high percentage are from literally the last 20 years. I wouldn't have King Kong on my list. I wouldn't have King Kong anywhere near my list. I like it. I love parts of it. And to be fair, I really do need to rewatch it. I haven't watched it since I've started my YouTube channel. I've never watched it as a film critic. Like the Tyrannosaurus Rex fight is an all-time great monster sequence. Maybe the best King Kong fight there is in cinema. I might make that argument. Probably would. And there's other things in it that are fantastic. The movie as a whole, best blockbusters of the last 40 years. I don't get it. That is such an overstatement to me that I can't get there with you. Yeah, I'm just so not on, like, I just don't get it, like, at all. That level of praise and love for it. Please give us something from the 80s. At least we're in the 90s. We've made it to the 90s with Titanic. This is another one where it was highest most expensive movie of all time when it came out. It was the highest grossing movie of all time when it came out. It's still one of the most highest grossing films of all time. So in those regards, I think it absolutely qualifies as a blockbuster. It is from a very mainstream director. Like, once again, when you think blockbuster, I don't know that I think tragedy, drama, best picture winner. And as soon as you include Titanic, as soon as this door is open, there's a number of other movies that you start going like, wait a minute, what about Saving Private Ryan? What about like these other movies that categorically would be similar to Titanic that I would probably include over it. But Titanic's a great film. Titanic is amazing. James Cameron just knows how to make these very sweeping films. Would I have it in my top 10 blockbusters? No. Some similar to just even what I said about, for very different reasons, to what I said about Mad Max, of like, it just isn't what I think about as a blockbuster. Like, I just define blockbuster as more fun. So if Mad Max is too weird for me to call it a blockbuster, Sinners was too mid-budget by today's standards, today's budgets, Titanic is too sad. But that's maybe the way what I would think about it. I would define things. But I certainly see, based off its budget, based off of its gross, how mainstream it was. It certainly could qualify. And I wouldn't go there, but I get it. I get why this would be on the list. And I'm glad we have another movie that's from before the year 2000 on the list. We only have one entry left. What could it be? Back to the Future, Lord of the Rings, Matrix, Pirates of the Caribbean. What will our final entry be on our list? And if it's Matrix, if it's Pirates, if it's Lord of the Rings, was there anything 80s on this list? Lord of the Rings is our winner. Little bit of a cheat here. I think you have to go representative sample if you do this, but also I'm not going to argue too much. But is there no 80s on this list? 97, 2005, 2025. Did I skip a movie? Is there literally no 80s on this list? They set the parameters to go back 40 years, and they do not have a single movie from the 80s on the list. That's crazy. Like, that is like bizarre. As someone that makes lists for a living, I'm very confused by the formulation of this list. I've said it many times before. I'm not a fan of the Lord of the Rings the way most people are fans of the Lord of the Rings. And the reason I say that is because, like, when I say I'm a Star Trek fan, I mean, I have a picture with William Shatner next to me on my desk. When I say I'm a Star Wars fan, I mean, I say I have a poster of Star Wars right here on my desk. And when I say I love Rocky, I've got a quote from Rocky right here on my desk. When I say that I love, let's go with Spider-Man and Sam Raimi, Evil Dead, I've got a picture with Sam Raimi right here. I just don't have that kind of excitement for Lord of the Rings. Like that, I'm a fan of this thing. Or say Scream's my favorite movie. I've got a picture with the cast of Scream right here. Like, favorite horror movie. That's what I mean. I don't have that passion for Lord of the Rings the way that I have for these other things that are to my taste, to my preferences. All of that said, in no way would I object to the Lord of the Rings being on a list of the best blockbusters of the last 40 years. Personal preference, my list of my 10 favorites, it would not be on the list. Do I in any way, like, you cannot argue with Lord of the Rings being on this list. By all objective metrics that you can go by, of course it should be on this list. It is beloved by fans. It made new fans. It won a ton of Oscars. It made a ton of money. Well, however, in here we are 25 years later, it's still like, yeah, they're fantastic. No one argues that. Of course it belongs on this list. Peter Jackson found a way to honor Tolkien, adapt it, translate it to a new medium in a way that absolutely was successful. Of course it belongs on this list. So, like, if I'm looking at this list, so I'll keep Lord of the Rings pretty easily, Titanic reluctantly. No to Sinners. Dark Knight, gotcha. I can't get there with Fury Road for this list. Jurassic Park, easily. Endgame as our Marvel sample, gotcha. Barbie, out of here. And then for something from this decade, I would go with Top Gun Maverick for 6. So if I had to throw 4 more in here, off the top of my head, Back to the Future, because you have 1985, it's right there. Matrix, 1999, I think that one's too big. That's just too important. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, since I can't put Raiders in there. And of course, Terminator 2, a little bit more 90s in there. So those are my ones, and we got some extra 80s in there, a little bit more 90s in there. So there is my version of it. I think that this is a deeply flawed list.